Look at this mouth. 4 black molars, a cheek swollen out to the size of a fist, eyes streaming, and a sharpened stone coming in from the side. He has not slept in 3 nights. The pain sits in his jaw and his ear and his eye socket all at once, and lying down makes it worse. So he has picked up the flake. Pull it? That is the question every ancient human with a toothache eventually had to answer. It is also not the interesting one. We are coming back to that stone, and to exactly what happens when it goes in. Not yet. Because 14,000 years ago in northern Italy, somebody sat down in front of a man exactly like this. They did not reach for the tooth. They reached into it. They scraped the rot out of a living molar with a stone point, then packed the hole. That is a filling. Before farming, before pottery, before writing, before metal, before the wheel. This is not a story about pulling teeth. It is older and stranger than that. And it starts with a mouth that should never have rotted in the first place. Pull a skull out of the ground from deep prehistory and the teeth are usually fine. Worn down, yes. Flat, chipped, sometimes ground to stumps by the grit that came in with the food. But the surfaces are smooth and there are no holes in them. Cavities are rare enough that finding one is an event. A tooth ground flat has no deep grooves left to trap anything in. The usual explanation for the rest is farming. Grain, porridge, bread, and the mouth collapses. Then there is a cave, 15,000 years old. The people buried in it are hunter-gatherers by every definition. Nobody near them has planted a field. Over half their teeth are rotten. Half. Not one unlucky man. A whole population walking around with mouths like the one we started with. They were eating acorns. Sweet acorns gathered by the sackload, plus pine nuts, pounded into a sticky paste and stored for winter. Sugar and starch pressed into the molars every day for months. The rough modern equivalent is a jar of peanut butter, a bag of dried figs, and no toothbrush. I spent years repeating that farming invented the cavity. Those acorns say I was wrong. They invented it without inventing the field, which means the toothache is older than agriculture. Whatever they did about it is older too. What does an untreated toothache actually do to a person? It goes downward. The rot eats through the enamel, then through the softer layer under it, then it reaches the nerve. That is the pain everybody recognizes. It is not the dangerous part. The dangerous part starts when the nerve dies. Now there is an infection at the bottom of the root inside the bone with nowhere to go. Pus does not stop being produced. It has to come out. So it eats a tunnel through the jawbone until it reaches the surface, and it opens. You can see this in skulls. A small round hole in the bone under a rotten tooth, edges worn smooth, drilled by nothing but infection. Sometimes that hole opens inside the mouth, sometimes it opens through the cheek, and the person lives the rest of their life with a leak in their face. There are jaws where you can put a matchstick straight through from the outside world to the root of a molar, and that is the good outcome. That is the version where the pressure escapes. When it goes the other way, it climbs into the sinus, or it drops into the soft tissue of the throat and the throat closes. This is a species that could die from a molar. Press 2 fingers flat against your cheek, just under the eye. That is where the tunnel comes out. It is closer to the front of your face than you would like. The first thing they did about it was not medicine. It was fidgeting. Look at the sides of ancient teeth, low down near the gum, and you find grooves. Small polished channels running across the tooth, always in the same place, always on the surfaces that face each other. Food does not do that. That is an object, held in a hand, pushed into the same gap thousands of times across years. A grass stem, a splinter of bone, a twig chewed at one end until it frays into a brush. These grooves are older than our species. Hominins were picking their teeth before they were people. On one Neanderthal jaw, the grooves cluster around exactly the teeth that were diseased. Bad gums, a tooth coming in sideways, and scratch marks parked right on the sore spot. He was not cleaning up after dinner. He was digging at the thing that hurt, because pressing on it helps for about 4 seconds. You have done this. Your tongue goes back to a sore tooth 100 times an hour, and so did his. It does nothing to an abscess. For most of human history, it was the entire toolkit. They needed an explanation for the whole. They got one. There is a clay tablet 4,000 years old that tells you where toothache comes from. A worm goes to the gods and asks for a home. It is offered ripe figs and apricots. It turns them down. It wants the gum. It wants to sit there and drink the blood of the jaw. It wants to chew the roots from the inside. Then the tablet gives instructions. Say the words 3 times, crush the ingredients, and put the paste on the tooth. The oldest dental prescription we have is an exorcism, and the worm stayed. It spread everywhere humans did, and it was still being printed in serious medical books long after somebody invented the microscope. Be fair to them. Something is boring a hole through solid bone from the inside. Something is producing pain that arrives and leaves on its own schedule and answers to nothing. If you you have never seen a bacterium, a worm is not a stupid guess. It is the best available one. The worm has one more job in this video. Somebody eventually worked out how to make it appear on demand in front of the patient. Now the painkiller, a Neanderthal, young, male, with an abscess sitting in his jawbone. The infection had already started eating into the bone. He was not having a good year. Plaque fossilizes. The hard crust on your teeth traps whatever goes through your mouth. Then it sits there, unchanged, waiting. They read his. Two things came out of the plaque on his molars. Poplar, which he had been chewing, and which contains salicylic acid, the working half of an aspirin, and penicillium mold, the mold that makes penicillin, a painkiller and an antibiotic, in the mouth of the one individual with the rotting jaw, not in the mouths of the others from the same cave. The bark is the part I cannot work out. Poplar is bitter. It is not food, and nobody else in that cave was chewing it. There is no chance he knew what salicylic acid was. He had the two things a doctor would hand you today. He still had an infection eating a hole through his jaw because neither of them touches the rot. Go back to that man from the opening. Under a microscope, the inside walls of his cavity are covered in tiny parallel scratches. They run in directions no chewing can produce. Someone held a stone point against the inside of a living tooth and dug. In another mouth from the same stretch of time, they went further. The cavity was cleaned the same way. Then it was filled. Bitumen, which is tar mixed with plant fibers and hair. They were not plugging a hole. They were reinforcing the plug thousands of years before anybody fired a pot. Then there is the drill. 9,000 years ago, a village made stone beads. Beads need holes, so the village had a bow drill, a flint tip spun fast by a looped string. 11 teeth from that village have holes drilled into them, molars. Back molars, the ones nobody can see into in the mouth of a person who is awake and can feel all of it. And inside those drilled holes, there is chewing wear. The surfaces are polished smooth over the drill marks. That only happens if the patient stood up, walked out, and used the tooth for years afterwards. It worked. 11 teeth from 9 different mouths. That is somebody with a reputation. Most people never got near a bead drill. Most people got the flake. Extraction was not a clean pull. A rotten tooth is a shell. Grip it and it shatters. Now somebody is picking fragments of root out of an infected socket. Somebody else is holding the head still. One ancient medical text tells you to cut the gum away from the tooth first, then rock it with your fingers until it moves. You never pull until it is already loose, because a fixed tooth takes bone with it. And before any of that, fill the hollow of the tooth. Lint or lead. Pack it solid so the tooth has something inside it and comes out in one piece. Lead in your mouth. To stop the tooth exploding, it is the same logic as pouring concrete into a rotten fence post before you yank it out of the ground. So, the question from the top, yes. In the end, everybody pulled it. And now the worm. Tooth pullers would heat henbane seeds on a hot plate. The patient sat over the smoke and breathed it in through an open mouth. Henbane is a real drug. It is in the nightshade family, and the smoke dulls the pain and sends the patient somewhere else entirely. Heated henbane seeds split open. Each one pushes out a small pale coiled thread. Worms. Dozens of them. On the plate, in front of the patient. Straight out of your head. The pain fades, the worms are visible, and the cure works. That is how you keep an idea alive for 4,000 years. Whoever worked that out was either the finest physician of his century or the finest con man. My money is not on the physician. So look at the man again. Swollen face, 4 black molars, 3 nights without sleep, a sharpened stone in his fist. He is not being primitive. He is holding the only thing that has ever reliably ended this. He will be holding it for another 14,000 years. You have a tube of paste and an appointment on Thursday. Take the appointment. Thanks for watching. All the sources and studies used in this video can be found in the description below.